Welcome to Global China in a Religious World. We are doing the second panel of the day. The panel is Chinese Religious Circulations, China, Southeast Asia, and beyond. We have 4 presentations today, and there is a small change in the plans, and we are going to start with the State, Space, and Identity, Cantonese Death Rituals in Contemporary Singapore by Donald Chan. So Donald, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Joseph. Let me just share my PPT first. So I need to count. I only have 15 minutes. Okay. So good evening, everyone, and thank you, Ming and also Freda for arranging everything. I'm Donald Chan, postdoctoral fellow from Tel Aviv University, and my presentation for today is State, Space, and Identity: Cantonese Death Rituals in Contemporary Singapore. So first, I will introduce my major argument. My paper reveals that the death ritual practice presented by the Cantonese Namo Dharma master in Singapore is indeed represented a kind of ritual nexus that is conflicted with multiple layers of roots, space, and identity in the Singapore context. The death rituals are adapted, modified, and created to blend into the distinctive environment in Singapore. Therefore, this research offers insight into the interplay of power dynamics concerning a larger so-called cultural value system of the Cantonese community to its diaspora identity. Before I get into the content of my research, it is important to introduce the meaning of Namo Dharma master for those who are not familiar with Cantonese religion. In Chinese character is Namo Dou Xi, or in Mandarin Nan Wu Dao Shu. They are a group of professional ritual specialists performing both death rituals and community offerings in the vernacular language, which is Cantonese, with monetary reward. So why is the death ritual important for the Cantonese community in Singapore? Chinese community is heterogeneous in nature. Although the notion of death and the need for rituals to be performed is universal among the Chinese, death rituals take very distinctive forms. Death rituals are essential for the Cantonese people in drawing on symbols of cleansing, healing, binding the ancestral property, as well as exercising their diaspora Cantonese identity. In fact, Cantonese death ritual is a set of complicated ritual with the funeral ritual, in Cantonese called Da Zai, as the core ritual. According to Professor Lai Jiting from Chinese University of Hong Kong, the ritual of Da Zai had manifested the ultimate concern of Cantonese Taoism. Through conducting the ritual, the soul of the deceased could reincarnate to a better life, while the mourners are also safeguarded by their ancestors. Although the death rituals presented in this research are closely modeled on the earlier performance, modifications can be identified by comparing the current funeral rituals with the one in pastime Singapore. Therefore, I tried to provide a study on the Cantonese death ritual with an account largely based on personal observation. The information on the Cantonese funeral rituals presented in this research is the result of the extensive fieldwork conducted between 2020 to 2022, as shown in this table. I witnessed 8 funerals, in part or in full of field research across Singapore. Most of the data were gathered while the funerals were in progress. The details of the funerals are presented in this table. Death rituals are, as I said, as a set of complex rituals performed by the Namo Dharma master, and the core ritual is definitely the funeral ritual, the Da Zai. So where do the Singaporeans hold a funeral wake? For the occasion in Singapore, many of the bereaved family ran the vow death of the HDB block. HDB is a short term for Housing and Development Block. The HDB block is an open and sheltered public space for the funeral and mortuary ritual. HDB flats are the public housing in Singapore. More than 80% of the resident population in Singapore lived in public housing under the HDB. So here are the photos of the HDB flat, and the photo of the right here, they are the vow death, which is the open space. And then this photo showed that during a funeral wake, the vow death in the HDB area is constructed in the private sacred space by constructing elaborate altars, banners, and entrance in and around as shown here. So this whole area now is a funeral wake. And the floor plan of the funeral in the vow debt is shown in this figure. As we can see, the coffin of the deceased here, the black one, is put at the innermost inside a tentage. A drum is played next to the coffin for the bereaved family to burn paper offerings. The Dharma Dowry Master established a temporary altar to perform the rites. And a yellow piece of that information notice is posted near the entrance. It is called Ying Yuan Zeng Ging. It's from right to left. This one, Ying Yuan Zeng Ging. Yeah. And then the funeral ritual is usually, this is a common altar found in the Cantonese funeral in Singapore. The script behind depicted the Samting, the three pure ones, or called the highest Taoist triple deities. The funeral ritual usually lasts for 3.5 hours and contains 4 different rites. The first 2 are compulsory and are found in all the funeral rituals. They are inviting the god Chen-san and opening sutra, Hoi Ging. The most important rite is breaking of hell, Po De Yok. These rites were performed to guide the soul of the deceased to walk through the hell. However, when the bereaved family prefer a small scale of ritual, the Lama Dharma Master would not perform the rite of breaking of hell. Instead, they chant the light of the 5 directions, Crossing the immortal bridge, Guo Xin Qiu, is the last rite in most of the Dazai ritual. It might be replaced by scattering flowers in some funeral rituals. So the Cantonese funerals in HDB vow that are in fact legitimized the state space as sacred through the rituals conducted by the Lama Dharma Master, and also preserve the continuity of the diasporic Cantonese identity. Religion rituals in Singapore always bring the sacred into the everyday life. Space in Singapore is always a battlefield between the state authorities and the ordinary people since the colonial era. With its independence in 1965, the landscape in Singapore continues to embody and reflect the contention and negotiation of power between the dominant and the subordinated in the society. The dominant state narrative of land scarcity means a constantly authoritarian approach to space and the uses of space. Therefore, the landscape of Singapore is highly planned and carefully denoted for specific uses. The state determines the size, nature, and tenure of any particular space. Religious space are in the face of scarcity, regulations, restrictions. Religious landscape are sacrificed for urban planning. However, the use of space is not completely manipulated or defined by state. Sacralized space would be subverted into sacred space during religious festivities. Sacralized space has the potential to be subverted and converted into sacred space. It is not a straightforward contest between the state and society, but an ongoing and often unspoken negotiation where implicit compromises are made on both sides. The rituals conducted by the Cantonese Lama Dharma Master illuminated how religious activities have transformed the state-defined space into a ritual sensorial zone. The vow debt in HDB area are space designed and regulated by the state. This state-defined physical infrastructure is, however, a multi-phased space and would be transformed into a temporary sacred space through the funeral rituals conducted by the Lama Dharma Master. Yet, this sacred space is at the same time tempered by the structure of the state regulations and physical limitation. In order to establish a site for funeral in the HDB vow debt, permission must be granted from the relevant authorities, which usually consist of the town council or resident community, RC. This means the funeral is technically existed as an unofficial space, must seek permission to create an official yet temporary sacred space. There are regulations as to how late funeral rites can be conducted. In most of the cases, activities must last no later than 10 p.m. So this photo shows a funeral lineage on and in the physical infrastructure of the vow debt. Lama Dharma Master make use of this limited space within the vow debt to conduct the funeral ritual. The physical infrastructure of the vow debt provide affordance for the Lama Dharma Master to chant their script and perform the rite. Pillar and tarpaulin sheet, as I have circled here, in the vow debt are used strategically to create rooms where the body of the deceased is placed in the innermost, and a temporary altar and other offerings are placed inside the partitioned space. The sacred boundary is further scratched through the placing of religious paraphernalia. Their presence transformed the landscape from physical to a mix of physical and spiritual space. All the ritual supplies and paper offerings without that the living interactions with the dead is mandate and evidence in transmogrifying physical efficacy into spiritual forms as presented in these photos. In a Cantonese funeral, paper offerings are symbolic objects of mandate items such as money, clothing, housing, mobile, credit cards, and more. When burned, such dead things that are tangible and embodied become fragmented and ethereal. They become those objects used in the spiritual world and consumed by the deceased spirit. The moment of burning is the point at which gift and offering meant for the deceased have their deliveries complete. Therefore, through the rite conducted by the Namo Dharma Master and the presence of ritual paraphernalia, the state-planted ethnic homogenization is also subverted temporarily. Since the Singapore government enforced Mandarin as the compulsory common mother tongue language for all ethnic Chinese since late 1970s, the heterogeneity of the speech patterns of the Cantonese community had become increasingly intelligible and consequently homogenized over the years. The intention was to forget a homogeneous and abstract Chineseness among Singaporean Chinese via the state active and openly interventionist language policy. Despite the eradication of dialect use from official discourses, language is still one of the key of defining self-identity, especially during religious festivities. The linearity of those sacred space without the formation of ethnic identity amongst the Cantonese community in Singapore. The placing of temporary altars and other religious paraphernalia can be seen as a form of identity performance. The manuscript chanted by the Namo Dharma Master in their vernacular Cantonese language, without that the individuals suffered homogenized state narrative of Chineseness through region-specific cultural forms transport from their point of origin. Moreover, the Cantonese death rituals are not standardized and always presented regional characteristics and variations across different Cantonese communities. In contemporary Singapore, although Dazai rituals are modeled on the early performance, the practice of the Cantonese Dazai rite have been changed. The most significant one is in the length of the rite conduct. It took one night, more than 12 hours, to finish the Dazai ritual in 1950s. Today, a Dazai ritual usually begins at 6 p.m. and ends at 10 p.m. There are regulations about how late a rite can be conducted. According to the record, the Dazai ritual usually contains 6 rites in 1950. However, the rite of the universal liberation over the rendering spirit is not found in the current fieldwork record. Moreover, although the rite of the breaking of hell is the most essential ritual, it might be replaced by the citation of Wuludan. In the past, the rite of crossing the immoral bridge and scattering flowers should be performed at the same night, yet only one of those two rites are performed in contemporary Singapore. The major motivation behind the invention and reinvention of Cantonese death rituals is to suit the changing social condition in Singapore. State intervention in Singapore affects socio-economic activities as well as the everyday life practice of Singaporeans. Singapore society has undergone transformation in the last few decades, with rapid economic growth resulting in drastic change in the social and cultural patterns. Those changes had resulted in adoption in the practice of death rituals and have similar influence traditional perception of such rituals. Although the state interventions through secularizing death rituals largely reconfigured and challenged the space-time of the normative way of death, Singaporeans do not simply internalize the discourse and logic that govern them. Some Cantonese Singaporeans assume simplified rituals, and mainly because the death ritual, and particularly their symbolic significance of ancestral worship and filial piety, were viewed by them as effective and financial burden. So, the concluding remark, in short, Cantonese death ritual in Singapore, framed with competing narrative of rituals, state regulation, and even diasporic identity. The rituals continues to have presence in contemporary Singapore, about in different ways from time past. The death rituals performed by the Namo Dharma Master as the HDB open area further epitomize the interactions and collision between the state, spirit, landscape, and the Cantonese identity. So here's the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Wow, that was awesome, Donald. Perfect timing. So for the next presentation, we have Ming Kuan, who brings the case of migrants, monks, monasteries, a study of Buddhism, of Buddhist networks between China and Malaya. So the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Josh. I'll try to share my PPT here. Okay. Hello everyone. My topic is about the Buddhist network between China and Malaya. And here I will focus on the migrants, monks, and also the monastery. Okay, sorry. So the Chinese Buddhism in Malaya is related to the Chinese Buddhism in China, especially during the late Qing dynasty and the early years of the Republic of China. Also the era of immigration from China to British Malaya. So the transnational Chinese Buddhist networks were established with the emergence of new monastery in Malaya, whose origin can be traced back to Chinese monastery. Indeed, by shedding light on the important factor of migrant monks and monasteries, this case study contribute to better understanding of the pattern and spread of the development of Buddhism originating from China in Malaya. So this is a sort of introduction about the case study I'm going to discuss. The first is the Yongquan Monastery, Yongquan, and also from the monks from the Yongquan, they established Kelo Monastery. Also, they moved to Kuala Kubu and found another temple, which is Old Guan Yin Temple. Later, the other monks from the Kelo Monastery, they also found the Guan Yin Temple in Penang. And the local layperson from the around the Old Guan Yin Temple, they found the new Guan Yin Temple. So basically, it's by case study here I'm going to discuss. So let me discuss the two monasteries in Penang. Start with the migrants. So Penang was a strategically important area for the British colonial development. Francis Light introduced two economic strategies for Penang growth. One of the strategy is instituting tax-free labor trade to attract diverse groups like Malay, Sumatra, South Indians, and Chinese from neighboring regions. This strategy brought in Chinese labor from the Fujian and Guangdong. Later, they formed a Chinese community in Penang. And at the same time, at the end of the Qing dynasty, economic decline in Fujian led to immigration to the Nanyang, and developed Chinese community in Penang offer better prospect. Therefore, the Busan Yongquan Monastery in Fuzhou was in a time of decline and seeking a revival. Realistic need lead monks such as Miao Lian to move from Fujian to Southeast Asia, spreading the Chinese Buddhism. Master Miao Lian, the abbot of Yongquan Monastery, together with other monks, they traveled to Nanyang and Penang in 1885 and 1887 to collect funds for the restoration of the Yongquan Monastery. As there was no Chinese Buddhist temple at first, so this monk, they have to provide service related to the needs of the Chinese community belief in exchange for funds. Here's the short introduction of Master Miao Lian. He also named Di Hua Yunchi. He was tonsured by Master Huai Zhong at Yongquan Monastery. He inherited Dharma lineage, which is Chao Dong Shouchang lineage. The other monks, which are the aspect of the Master Miao-Lian include Master Benzong, also known as Fu Yue and Dao Nan. He was tonsured by Master Che Wu at Yongquan Monastery. He was ordained precept by Master Miao-Lian and inherited Dharma lineage from Master Miao-Lian, which is Chaodong Shouchang lineage. Master Sanqing, also known as Fu Yue and Hai Quan, he was tonsured by the Master He Feng at Yongquan Monastery and was ordained precept by Miao-Lian. He also inherited Chaodong Shouchang lineage. So in terms of Dharma transmission, we can see that their name actually indicated the descending generation of their Dharma lineage. So according to the poem of generation of Chaodong Shouchang lineage, we can see that actually the poem 慧远道大兴，法界一顶心，通天并彻地，耀古复梵经。The word 地 in this poem actually is the name of Miao-Lian Dihua, and Benzong Fu Yu and Sanqing Fu Yue, their name is in the Fu Zi, the Fu word in this poem. So due to the great strength of its monastery community in terms of relationship, Yongquan Monastery became the center of a large number of monks who travel to Nanyang and provide medicinally for the later development of Chinese Buddhism in the Nanyang. Now we talk about two case studies here. The first is Kelong Monastery. So before this monk they found Kelong Monastery, they were invited to serve at the Chinese folk religious temple, which is Guangfu Gong. They mainly manage the religious affairs as well as handle funeral and burial for the local Chinese. Later, Master Miao-Lian found that this temple is not suitable to practice Chinese Buddhism. Therefore, he decided to look for a place to set up a real Chinese Buddhist monastery. At the meantime, the rest of the monks, they still serve at Guangfu Temple. With their own saving, these monks started set up the hall, or we say temple, that worship Guan Yin, Di Zhang Pusa, and also Fu De Zhengshen in 1901 and 1904. Sorry, I need to, okay. After setting up the small temple, the monks have to plan to expand it into a monastery. And they asked the Pingjiang Public House, which is the highest Chinese center in local, to advocate for fundraising, but were turned down. So Master Miao-Lian turned to the support of the 5 Hakka community leaders, which are Zhang Yunnan, Zhang Huishen, and so on. These leaders, they start jointly support the Kelong Monastery, and they donate money or property to this monastery. Besides that, there were also Grand Director Da Dongshi, formed by 9 Hokkien community leaders, include Yan Wumei, Lin Huazhang, Ning Yaohuang, and so on. So through the deities of folk belief and Buddhas and Bodhisattva, Bodhisattva with folk belief element, Chinese Buddhism was more readily accepted by the Chinese immigrant community, and it was only through the cohesion of the Chinese community that Chinese Buddhism was able to spread more widely. So this is the Kelong Monastery. And another case study is Guanyin-si. In 1992, Master Benzong, he began to preach the Nembusu, so that the people can understand the Buddha's teaching in simple way. He resigned as abbot at Guangfu Gong due to this disagreement with Guangfu Gong, and with the assistance of Huixing, Fa Kong, and Bao Ling, Benzong then established Guan Yin Temple in 1922 to continue to preach Nembusu, which is name for Famen. Yeah. So this is the picture of Guan Yin Temple. And next is 2 monasteries in Kuala Kubu. So Kuala Kubu is located in central Malaya, was one of the first towns developed by the British colonial government. As the tin mine activity exploited by the government, the number of Chinese immigrants moving to this area has gradually increased. And the Chinese devotion to religious affair can show it in the donation in this temple. So according to historical material, we can see that Chen Jingmei, Chen Wenshen, Lin Wanqian, a lot of famous Chinese leaders, they also involved in religious affair. They also brought in Chinese monk for the temple, which is Master Sanqing we're going to talk about. In 1904, Li, a female follower, she visited the Kelo Monastery and was impressed by its solemnity. So she invited the Master Sanqing to serve at Guanyin Temple. At that time, Guanyin Temple in Kuala Lumpur has only one hall and is not familiar to the local. So Master Sanqing took ownership of the expansion affair and religious affair. He found the construction of 2 additional rooms, a kitchen, a firewood room, and a back hall, and so on. He also mobilizing Dharma dispersed and Tonshu dispersed in order to hold the authority of temple. So this is a short introduction about Sanqing and his disperse. First is Dharma dispersed, which is we can see the first generation of the dispersed is Teng, Teng generation, Teng Ding, Teng Lang, and Teng Chao, so on. And the second generation is Jing Zhao, Jing Wu, Jing Xi, and so on. This is because they named them Sanqing, he named his dispersed according to the form of generation of the Shouchang lineage, Chaodong Shouchang lineage, which is Fu Zhi, refer to Sanqing Fu Yue, and the Teng here refer to Teng Zhi Bei, and also the Jing refer to the Jing generation. Also, his Tonshu dispersed, we can see is Sanqing and De Hui De Fa, and also Pu generation. Okay, so the monastery here we talk about is Old Guanyin Temple. This temple, in terms of belief system, is quite different from Yongquan Monastery and Telo Monastery. And this is because influenced by the local Chinese belief and the need of abbot. The first element in the belief system is the deities of Chinese Buddhism, include Guanyin, Dizang Pusa, and Xian Pusa. The deities of Chinese folk religion include Fu De Zhen Shen, Di Zhu Gong, Dragon God, Tiger God, and Taiying Xingjun, Taiyang Xingjun, and so on. Also, Master Sanqing, he also worshipped his own ancestor in this temple. We can see the grandparents, parents, and his uncle, also his own master, He Feng, Jing Feng, Ding Feng, and so on. Also, the benefactor of this temple, the benefactor was worshipped in the form of statue, also in tablet, because they donate a lot of money to this temple. So another temple, which is New Guanyin Temple, actually is accident with the declaration of the Malayan emergency in 1948. The British colonial government forced the Chinese to relocate to Kuala Lumpur Baru to live centrally in the new village in order to break the contact between the Malayan Communist Party and the Chinese community. The Chinese therefore have to remove the statue, tablet, and stone monument, and so on from the Guanyin Temple and rebuild it at Kuala Lumpur Baru. All this was perhaps unforeseen by the Master Sanqing, and showed that with the spread of Chinese religion in Malaya, the development of the monastery was closely related to the development of the local Chinese community and the overall social environment during the colonial government. So the conclusion is, according to this case study, we can see that the China monastery provided cultural resource to the monastery in Malaya, while the China monks spread Buddhism to Malayan Chinese community. Chinese diaspora community were recipient and also supporter of Chinese Buddhism. This is why the places where Chinese Buddhism spread were often the place where the development of the Chinese diaspora community was more stable and prosperous. The mobility of monks was also key to spread and develop Chinese Buddhism across the ocean. The eminent monks, in this case, is Venerable Miao-Lian, had the ability to lead the monks and rally the followers, and the master-disciple relationship play a role in mobilizing several monks for religious activity. Also, the establishment of the monastery was the beginning of the foundation of institution Chinese Buddhism in Malaya and the relationship between monastery and temple. The monastery-to-monastery relationship become weaker after generation branching, but the first locally established temple, which is Kelong Monastery, became an important link between the original Chinese temple and the branching temple in Malaya. So I will end my presentation here. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. I think Kuan is for a fascinating presentation. So the next presentation is Struggle of Identity of Transnational Buddhist Meditation Practices in Contemporary China by Ngar-sze, if I pronounce your name properly. Thank you very much, and the floor is yours.
Thanks for the chair, Jos, and can you see the screen? Okay. This paper examines the identity issue of the popularity of transnational Buddhist meditation in contemporary Chinese Buddhist communities with the influences of Buddhist modernism in Southeast Asia and globalization. Despite the revival of traditional Chan school meditation practices since the open policy, some Han Chinese monastics and laity have traveled to Southeast Asia, Southeast Asian countries such as Thailand, Myanmar, and Sri Lanka to practice as yogis or short-term monastics in the Theravada tradition. So, as you may know or may not know, the majority of Han Chinese practice the Mahayana Buddhist tradition. Among the three Buddhist traditions, Mahayana, Theravada, and Tibetan. But this is a recent trend that Han Chinese from mainland China traveling to Southeast Asia to learn Theravada meditation practices. And then they became yogis or short-term monks and nuns in Southeast Asian countries. And after returning to mainland China, some became activists in attempts of promoting Theravada meditation by organizing retreats in mainland China and building transnational network. However, with the restriction of the party-state policy and mainstream culture, most Theravada meditation activities can only be held at Chinese Mahayana monasteries. Therefore, all monasteries or meditation centers in Theravada tradition can hardly be established. The restriction has rendered the constitution of hybrid religious forms and modern reinterpretation of Buddhism. So, drawing from multi-site ethnographic study, so my research in this paper will examine a few cases of promoting transnational meditation, and also I would like to answer questions about to what extent a new identity of the transnational meditation, particularly in Theravada tradition, has been built to contemporary Han Chinese. And how have the transnational networks of Theravada meditation communities contribute to the changing Buddhism in contemporary China? So from my field work, I have already characterized a few types of the Theravada meditation communities built in mainland China in the past decade. And then I will discuss a few cases before going to the discussion and conclusion. So from my previous study, I found that Chinese yogis have created transnational networks with meditation centers in Southeast Asia countries. And the activists invite meditation gurus from Southeast Asian countries, especially Myanmar and Sri Lanka, to lead regular retreats in China, especially before 2018. So they promote Theravada meditation teachings also through online formats, for example, websites, Weibo, and mobile apps. And they also organize some Gongxiudian in person or online for the regular practices. So I tried to categorize into 3 types of meditation communities. The first type is the Vipassana retreats. So usually in contemporary China, they call it Neiguan-Can. Although it's called Vipassana only, but it also includes Samadhi practices. So Vipassana Neiguan is a very broad concept in this way. So the first type would be Vipassana retreats in one tradition held at Han Chinese monasteries. For example, this is the Goenka's tradition. Goenka, an Indian guru who passed away already. And they firstly organized meditation retreats in many secular venues like hotels or other or retreat or some resort centers. But it's not allowed under the policy of religion in the country. So they moved to Buddhist monasteries, especially the Chinese Buddhist monasteries. For example, this nun, she passed away already. She built a center, a big center for this retreat, mainly for this tradition mainly. The other type of meditation center or meditation communities is a Vipassana retreats in various traditions held at Chinese Buddhist monasteries. In other words, means that some Buddhist monasteries they held various kinds of Vipassana meditation traditions. So they invite meditation teachers from different traditions. For example, there's a monastery in South China from these photos. So they invite U Pandita and also another Burmese monk from other tradition. This is the Udasaniya in the middle. And usually they organize for retreats for 50 people only under the policy. So the third, so this is the Chinese monastery, a CHAN monastery, and they held Vipassana meditation retreats in Theravada tradition. The final type I would categorize is the Theravada monastic sangha and also monastery, but they can only organize this kind of building or Theravada monastic sangha in ethnic minorities area, such as Xishan-Bana. So these communities they have grown quite fastly. They tried to build a monastery in Beijing, but unfortunately, that monastery cannot hold any Theravada activities anymore. So this is, but they successfully built transnational networks, and so they donate some money every day to Myanmar to few branches of this Pao tradition. So also some online, different kinds of online activities through mobile apps and also websites. So I would like to share with you a few cases, including monks and nuns and also some lay people who traveled to Southeast Asia, and what did they do that? For example, Mr. Zhao from Liaoning, and he was a devout Buddhist since he was adolescent. However, later he found that he would like to have different kinds of Buddhist experience, and he found that the traditional Mahayana Chan practice experience could not satisfy his needs or his expectation. And later he had chance of learning Vipassana meditation. For example, he quit his 20-year smoking habit after attending a Vipassana retreat, so he was quite surprised. And later he ordained as a short-term monk at Yunnan before he traveled to Myanmar later. For example, this is the photo. He has his own kuti, his own small hut for practicing meditation at Myanmar. A Pao tradition is called a Mae Miao Center. Mae Miao is the place, the name of the place in North Myanmar. And you can see the number. There are nearly 1/3 of Chinese bhikkhus, we call Chinese monks, at that center. And he visited Myanmar. He visited this center, becoming a monk for at least 3 times. But every time he returned to China, he disrobed as a lay person, instead with the bhikkhu as a bhikkhu identity. And he also had helped start many meditation group like Gongxiao Dian in Beijing and also other places. But he found that it's very difficult to keep the monkhood, monk identity in China. That's why he decided not to disrobe every time after he returned to China. So another case is Kema, and a lady. When I met her, she was already 66 years old, and he was an 8 precept nun. So she was not a fully ordained nun. Why did she decide to keep this identity after returning to from Myanmar to China? Is because she found that the Theravada tradition make meaning for her, and although she found that it's very difficult to keep the 8 precepts, and she could not wear dress like a Burmese nun. You see from the photo in Myanmar, 8 precept nun would dress in this pink robe, and she could not do that in China because she was not accepted to do so in any Mahayana Chinese Buddhist monasteries. So with a strong determination, she decided to take the 8 precepts as long as she could in her life. And so that is, she mentioned that I have kept the sila with 8 precepts strictly in my mind, although it was difficult to be understood by many others. And more interestingly, she could not speak English. She could not understand many English or a full sentence, but with the strong determination, she went to Myanmar 2 times. So the third case I would like to share with you is Wu You, a monk. I'm a young monk who studied a few years at Foshui-Yuan, a Buddhist Studies Academy in Suzhou. And later, he was interested in Theravada Buddhist meditation, and then he went to Yangon for the 1-year international diploma program. And after that, he ordained as a bhikkhu, a monk, a fully ordained monk in Yangon. When he returned to China, he firstly dressed in Burmese tradition, the brown robe. But later, he found that it's very difficult to be accepted in Mahayana Chinese Buddhist tradition. Although he started teaching Vipassana meditation for lay people at a Buddhist monastery, he taught in a hybrid format. For example, he he transformed the Buddhist hall. So in a Chinese Buddhist monastery, he transformed the seat as a Theravada tradition, or like similar to the Burmese style. But at the same time, he
2 minutes.
Oh, okay. He brought other practices like yoga and also Ping Shui Gong from I think it's the Taiwan master, and also some psychotherapeutic practices, exercise in the teaching. And one more, I think the more important thing is he could not keep his Burmese robe anymore, and he ordained again in the Chinese Mahayana tradition. So I will skip the last case, a Bhikshuni, a Chinese nun. And then, so about the identity of the Theravada Buddhism in contemporary China, I recall the vision of Tai Shi, the famous Buddhist reformer who want to reform Buddhism. So he built transnational network of Buddhism in the Republican era. However, he also sent monks and disciples to Japan, and also to Sri Lanka, to India, to Burma for learning Buddhism. However, in his view, he want to transform Chinese Buddhism as a global Buddhism, instead of giving up Chinese Buddhism. My final two final slides. So with the party state relaxing tourist policy, educated Chinese Buddhists, including monastics and lay people, have traveled to Southeast Asia to learn transnational meditation. And Chinese yogis are motivated to transplant transnational Theravada meditation communities in China to create their emergent sacred space. However, transnational meditation activities have been held in a hybrid form only at Han Chinese Buddhist Monastery under the party state policy. And the unique identity of Theravada tradition has become impossible. However, I would argue that so this is there's a significant trend of CHAN revival, and it may be seen as a joining force of the trend of repositioning the CHAN school in the Chinese Buddhist context with the support of the party state. So I stop here. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I will just give the floor directly to the presentation, the transformation and transmission of Chinese Shigandang belief in modern Vietnam by Hoang-Yen. Hoang-Yen, the floor is yours.
Good evening, Chair and other scholars. It's very nice to meet you here, and I'm really sorry for my mistaken the time in Vietnam and in Hong Kong and in Singapore. So sorry again. So now I will share my my screen, so that's all. You can see this. Sorry, but can you see my screen now? So once again, good evening, everyone. And my name is Huang-Yen Nguyen, and I'm now working at the University of Social Sciences and Humanities in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. And it's my great pleasure to be here to share with you my research on the transformation and transmission of the Shigandang village in modern Vietnam. And here is my key content that I will share with you today. First of all, I will share with you some information about the Shigandang in Vietnam, and of course, after that, we will go to the main content about my research today, so that we can talk about the Shigandang fever in the north of Vietnam, as well as the reasons behind this phenomenon. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about Shigandang in Vietnam. Actually, we don't have a very exact records about when the Chinese Shigandang was introduced to Vietnam. But now the earliest Shigandang that we can find in Vietnam was in the 15th century in the Bắc Giang province in the north of Vietnam. Is not very far from Hanoi. And from the first Shigandang that we can find, actually, and after that, according to our materials and after documents that we can see it here, we can know that actually Shigandang was rather popular in northern and in the central as well as in the south of Vietnam during the 17th to the 19th century, as you can see over here. So now, actually, you can see the Shigandang. Maybe I can see that a lot of places in all over Vietnam. And you can see here, we can see it in the north, many provinces in the north, in the central, you can see here, and also in the south of Vietnam, as you can see here. But once again, I have to talk about something like a gap of the Shigandang in Vietnam is quite popular in Vietnam before the end of the 19th century. But between the end of the 19th century to the end of the 20th century, we have many a few records about the Shigandang in Vietnam at that time. And it seems that the people in Vietnam, we forgot about Shigandang. But not until the 7 years in the end of the 20th century and to the year of the 21st century, we have a very Shigandang fever, even craze in the north of Vietnam. So now let's let's see some picture or some how popular is the Shigandang in Vietnam, as you can see here. Okay, so how popular is this? So first of all, you can see there are so many kinds, really, so many kinds of the Shigandang products in the north, especially in the north of Vietnam, as you can see here. And the Shigandang, you can see here what's in various materials, style and size, and also the producing country, as you can see here. You see, it can be made of stone, or it can be very big, or it can be very small. And you can see here is some picture of the Shigandang that was made in Vietnam. And you can see it's like the stone that you can see here. And it's like the picture that you can hang in the house or in the office. Maybe you can put it or you hang it in the corner of the doors or the streets, corner of your house as well. And here I want to share with you a very interesting case of the Shigandang in Vietnam. Actually, this kind of Shigandang is really very big. And it's about almost 3 meters high, and it was constructed in a very big construction in the center of Hanoi. And you can see that because it's also it's very popular, but the Feng Shui master in Vietnam even have grown name. We can see here the Shigandang, not Shigandang, but by seeing this picture, you can know that wow, the Shigandang is really quite popular in the north of Vietnam, even now, even until now. And besides the Shigandang made in Vietnam, we also have a lot of Shigandang that's made in China. That is also very popular in Vietnam. As you can see here, it's maybe in the paper and it's like the metal. You can hang everywhere you want, and it's like a small item so that you can put it on the table or at the office. So you can see that wow, the Shigandang is the north of Vietnam. They are it's really very popular in a very different and various style and size, and you can see that they can put it in everywhere they want, that they say that they can, that they think that it can protect their life, brings the prosperity to the people, or brings the lucky to the people. So why the Shigandang is become so hot in the north of Vietnam in the year of the 21st century until now? Actually, I there are a lot of reasons behind this phenomenon, as I list some of it over here. But in my presentation, I will focus on three reasons, as you can see over here. First of all, I want to talk about the economic basis. It means that, you know, that's because of the opening of the Vietnam, as well as the economics of Vietnam is getting better and better every day. So it also means that the people of Vietnam, they have more money so that they can pay for the product. They can pay for the reason that they choose, that, and they believe that it can protect them, and it can bring luck to them. So I think that is also very important. So that's for the Vietnamese people to be familiar and to follow the Shigandang. And another very important reason I say that is what the feng shui master and the feng shui store or feng shui shop, as you can see here. And I have to admit that they are very good and very talented product manager, that they can make the Shigandang become very popular again. And another reason is that the China Shigandang market. So how to say it? Let's take a picture over here. Actually, the picture you see here is a picture from e-commerce website in China, and you can see that a lot of Shigandang products over here, right? So it also means that because the Shigandang market in China is very major, so it can supply or it can offer a lot of the Shigandang products for the Vietnamese market, And we also have to thanks to the internet, so that all through the feng shui master and the pupil in Vietnam, they can just browse the internet and they can get all the access and all the information about the Shigandang, as well as the information as well as the Shigandang products in China. And once again, we have to admit that because now the cross-border trade between China and Vietnam is really very convenient, and it's really very fast. When I doing the surveys with the feng shui master, feng shui shop in the north of Vietnam, I asked them, and they even told me that if one of the flower they like or some Shigandang product in China, and this product is not very big or not very heavy, actually they can bring it back from China directly to Vietnam. Only in if it's very fast, in only 2 days, or normally it gets them about 3 to 7 days to bring when the Shigandang products are from China to Vietnam. So we can see that the Shigandang market in China is really play a very important role in the revival of the Shigandang belief in Vietnam. And you can see that it offers the supply of the Shigandang to the Vietnamese market. And another reason, I think you can see here, I just said that the feng shui master in Vietnam, I think that's really good, the Shigandang product manager. How to say that? Because you know, that's one, the Vietnamese people, they seem that they forgot about the Shigandang, but under the consideration and under the management of the feng shui master and their strategy, they make the Shigandang live again and become very popular. And how did they do that? And you know that for the feng shui master or the feng shui store in the north of Vietnam, they saw Shigandang as a religious product. So to be a religious product, so Shigandang, it has to be a normal commodity first, and after that, it has to be a religious product. So the feng shui master, they do all what they can to develop some essential product feature to make Shigandang product can become popular and become welcome by the Vietnamese people or Vietnamese follower again. For example, you can see some of the strategy over here. For example, we know that for community, the product will have something like the utilities, benefits, or the accessibility, or the value for money, right? So the Shigandang, the feng shui master, they intentionally expand and act a lot of social function for Shigandang at that time. You know that in the past, we know that Shigandang, it can help us to defeat the evil, and it can protect you from the evil, or protect you from the water or something like that, right? But now, under the narrative or the interpretation of the feng shui master in Vietnam, the Shigandang, they have a very powerful function. For example, it can protect you from the mean boss or from the evil. It even can help you to, if you are longing to have a baby, the Shigandang also can help you. Or for example, if your husband is having an affair or something like that, and you don't want him to have an affair, you can buy the Shigandang to come back home, something like that. So they ask a lot kind of Shigandang, and you can say that for the Vietnamese people, as long as they have any kind of need, the Shigandang God also can protect and can meet the demands. And another thing is that look, I just show you the picture of the Shigandang product. You can see that they use and they utilize a lot of many kinds of the Shigandang products and provide it to the Vietnamese people and the Vietnamese follower. So you can say they use not only the Shigandang in produced in Vietnam, but also produced in China to make it very powerful and also very multi-choice. Okay, and of course they also try something to strengthen the mystery, the element of Shigandang, so that the Vietnamese people believe in the Shigandang and the power of Shigandang more and more by retelling the story or the reason of Shigandang, so that the Vietnamese people can understand more about Shigandang and believe more in Shigandang. And they also design a ritual performance, as you can see over here. So that the Vietnamese people, when they take part in the ceremony, they will the feng shui master will guide them into a religious experience that makes them believe more in the Shigandang. And besides all this, you can see as a product, they have to develop a multi-channel distribution from the physical store. And you can see over here, there's a lot of Shigandang products that you can see here with different prices and new one. And they also have their website, their homepage, their Facebook or TikTok, which is a very TikTok, and also the e-commerce. You see here is the four major e-commerce website of Vietnam. You can see, and actually we see a lot, many kinds of Shigandang product here, and it seems like a lot of them is from directly from China, as you can see here. You can see here. So that I just can just introduce to you about the transformation of Shigandang belief in the north of Vietnam. So I can say that it's still very popular in the north of Vietnam now. And actually, we can say that during this process, the Vietnamese feng shui master, they commercial the Shigandang product, and it also makes the Vietnam and the transformation of Shigandang in Vietnam is different from other countries in the East Asia as well as the Southeast Asia as well. But I think that this phenomenon is not a very it is a very typical case, but I think that is also a very common case of the global phenomenon of the religion in the world. So I think that when we are facing this phenomenon, that we have to do maybe do more research, do introduction, so that the Vietnamese people and other people can understand more about this Shigandang fever in the north of Vietnam, and we can help the people to know the nature of the Shigandang. What's going on in Vietnam, and it's not Vietnam. Okay, so I think it's my presentation. Sorry again, and thank you again for the listening. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hoang-Yen. So I'm going to give the floor directly to the discussant, Weishan. So please, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Jos. Can you hear my voice?
Yes.
Okay, that's my recovering voice from COVID. I will be short because I rather donate the minutes back to our speaker, and we have more than 50 participants. I'm sure there's a lot of questions cooking. So I will start with the first paper, State, Space, and Identity, Donald's paper. This is like really amazing field work. I know many of you may not have a chance to read the paper. I don't think the presentation 50 minutes do the justice for the whole beautiful paper. The rich data also draw reader into those funnel sites. But here I'm going to ask the question about your argument. I don't have the question about the Taoist ritual since we have David outside here. So my first question here, can you help outsider to understand a little bit about the regulation of space in Singapore? I understand there's a heavy state control about the space where we can perform the Taoist ritual, and particularly coming to the Nanmu Taoist priest. But religious activity has held in this residential estate. For example, my question would be, why not in the temple? And this void deck of this housing development board, based on your picture, actually very spacious and well controlled and quite safe and so on. So it's very nice, but in a way, at least my reading from the article is kind of a limitation and control. So I want to hear about the regulation coming from this purposely built public space. And you focus on the space, a little bit question about the location. For example, there's a choice of a funeral parlor versus public space. And based on your writing, most of the choice tend to happen in public space. And it's a reason for that. And it's because it's close to deceased home, and this is a custom as well. That's about the location. And a little bit about the temple. I know very little about the Taoist temple in Singapore. For example, the funeral service usually could be served as an important source for the temple's economic income. But somehow this has been outsourced into the Nanmu Taoist priests here. If you have information, I would like to learn more. And here, again, tie back to your argument about role of the state, continue with the control of space. But we all had to remember Singapore has a limited space. And also when it comes to the beautiful picture you just presented, the fire in the public space and so on, you know. So here my question about your ending argument. When you mentioned about the practice of a Cantonese Taoist rite has changed over the time in Singapore, and most significant one is related to the length of the ritual itself. And you do mention about the modification of a Cantonese death ritual has somehow, you know, been manifest due to the social change in Singapore. Here, the two possibilities you gear to, one is the state control. You do mention about, for example, when faced the state regulation quotation, the ritual tradition of a Cantonese ritual subtly adjust themselves to their circumstance. And also you gear to, there's another way to look at the family, because when family hold those rituals, not in the funeral parlor, but in the public space, they would like to release their burden and the time and so on. So in your verbal presentation, I feel it's much stronger geared to the family's choice. Can you clarify? If that's so, coming to my next question, still tied up with your identity question, because the whole this kind of ritual service in the public space is tied up to this kind of Taoist diaspora identity. And I love the way you put it related to the state control in Singapore in 1970s, you know, when state actually have a sanction about dialogue. They cannot play on the TV and radio and so on. But here we look at 2021, your field work. People can sing in Cantonese, you know, a ritual and so on, that in the public space. And that itself is a subversion, as you say, very strong. But here my question is, at the same time, you also emphasize the short term of the ritual itself. Therefore, how do you say, can you say a little bit more about how do you tie back to this Cantonese diaspora identity? So For example, the Taoist ritual in the beginning of your first couple pages of opening, the ritual is so important and so critical for Cantonese, not just Cantonese in Canton, Hong Kong, but also the diaspora, because the death itself, you need a big conversion, transformation, and therefore you can transform those ghosts into a beneficial ancestor. That is so important. But now everything has to finish in 3.5 minutes. And how there's any new rationale to say about this identity? Thank you. For the next paper is Ming Kuan. The paper's research examined the development of Chinese Buddhism in the British Malaya in the 19th century. I really had to confess, I read your paper with great deal of interest, but I'm definitely not an expert here. So you focus on, you want to talk about the formation of a Chinese community and the mobility of diaspora monk, and also the division of Buddhist monasteries. And you also explore how the Chinese Buddhism spread and develop in the different regional variants and how it helped Chinese immigrants build their community, build their identity, their identity in a new environment. I really appreciate the way you beautifully put it, how you reconstruct this 4 generations of lineage, temple management, and the temple buildings, those efforts. But my first question will be, for the outsider, can you help us understand the data you use, the source? Because in your paper, I understand we try to submit all our partial paper to the conference, but there's no any citation or footnote. So the first question about the source. And the second question will be the mobility of a monk for fundraising. This is the part is really amazing. You show us, for example, the Miaolin, how he traveled between the Fujian and the Nanyang and promote this status of temple, and that's the way for them to gain this kind of status in the temple. For example, be promoted by the Abba and so on. But my question for you is, I'm actually very surprised to read that you mentioned about one of the temple. Here, the Jile-si, Kanlo Monastery follow this kind of large extent of Yongquan-si. Everything what I do in Fujian, they just copied it, including the architectural style. But interestingly, such an effort to build the temple, but they will say they will make the temple into the 10-side jungle, Shifang Chonglin. Therefore, they make it as a public temple, and therefore it kind of a giveaway in a sense, even though I don't know if you have any data further explain why. Is there anything connect with that kind of a reform movement in the early 20th century in the north part of Buddhist temple in Shanghai, for example, or this kind of a 10-sided jungle monastery, this kind of vision is popular in a way. But also, do you have a data to prove in the end it really become a Shifang Chonglin or not? Because what you show later in the paper, since Chongqing changed her mind, right? Changed his mind, the temple has become a T2 Pai. But here come to the same question about identity, because this is also part of your central argument. So my question for you will be the identity of a migrant. In the abstract, you mentioned about this study was suggested that how Chinese religion could help the Chinese immigrant build their identity in their new environment. I don't know, in your data archive or temple archive and so on, is there anything to prove that besides what we learned about the Chinese patron in Malay, they support the building of the temple building, but also we understand that's not the only temple they built. For example, you also mentioned about Guangfu Gong. So in a way, how do we make such a strong claim? There's evidence that the Chinese religion helped Chinese immigrants build their identity. If so, what kind of identity can you help us to understand a little bit more? It's being a Buddhist, meaning being a Chinese or not? But what's the role of Chinese religion, such as Guangfu Gong or other hometown association, play in the same area that I'm curious to learn? So the next paper will be here, the struggle of identity of transnational Buddhist meditation practice in contemporary China. So again, this thank you. It's a privilege to read all the 4 papers. I thank you all. And I know you've been working on this kind of transnational meditation for years. So I just have a couple of thoughts for your consideration. In your open sentence, you say this paper examines the identity issue of a popularity of transnational Buddhist meditation in contemporary Chinese Buddhist community with the influence of Chinese modernism in the Southeast Asia and globalization. So my first question for you will be, you emphasize about the, there's a project move on to a direction of a global Buddhism. So what is global Buddhism? You argue that the transnational meditation movement is not just it's not only a project of a reform Chinese Buddhism. You use the word reform, but also a path toward ideal global Buddhism, making Buddhism a global religion since the Republican era. That's end of quotation. So if you can clarify, that's your big argument in the paper. But I understand later in your verbal presentation, you changed to Tai Chi. So your choice, you can pick one. But here, come back to the question about the paper. You have a lot of data, and I guess my question for you is somehow you are driven in several directions. You want to form this global Buddhism and a project coming from China. Then who are actors in this project? That's my question. And another possible, you're writing a lot is about the gender, but they've been scattered in different pages. So the question about the gender in this practice is, I learned from you, the CHAN Qi are practiced by monk and male lay practitioner only in the mainland China, which means the traditional ritual reject CHAN Qi, female entering the Chan meditation, CHAN Tang, and so on. So that is the shocking news. So for me, it's like you seem to have a couple passages, you try to put it together. This could be potentially, if not lead, but this mobility was caused by the mostly female practitioner, in this whole movement. And you may not be able to see who is a clear leader because people come and go and come to different center, and some stay longer, some stay shorter, and so on. So gender perhaps is one way. Maybe you want to make it become a stronger variable to talk about this whole mobility. Particularly, you also write about the Chinese nun and lay women enjoy this kind of equal opportunity. From what I read in your data, most of petitioners since women as well, when you were there. That's just a suggestion. The next question will be the meditation is a relationship with this whole therapy and the psychoanalysis function in your writing. You also spend a lot of time, a lot of pages writing about this psychoanalysis. So my question for you for this, you describe this meditation fever for this kind of therapy. Is there anything to do with the therapy itself become a fever in China itself in the last 2 decades and so on? And maybe there is no connection back home. And also my final question, actually 2 more questions. One more question about terminology, and I am very sorry about my pronunciation. But here's, you have a lot of different Buddhist terminology, all has been, coming out to describe the kind of specialized meditation, samanthas, and vipassana, for example. And then later, the couple page in the end, it become the mindfulness. And I understand this phenomena is extremely interesting, and then it's so difficult to describe that. But what is the strategy to organize those different practice? Some things are very technical, and some connect with medical psychoanalysis, and some you use is very secular practice, how to eat the resin and so on, the kind of mindfulness. And I guess this is a question not only for you, it's for many of us when we're talking about meditation, Chaisho, we all fall into this challenge. And the final question about when you describe, you have a lot of data describe about this movement, mobility and so on. And maybe I should not call it movement because individual, they move freely. There is seems no coordination. So my question for you is about actually organization. Do you observe any new master disciple or changing concept of Buddhist membership? I do find you wrote about the traveling yogis is highly interesting. So let me go back to quickly about the first paper here, Hoang-Yen, Shigandang. Okay. So this is by way of introducing this Shigandang involving this great variety of spiritual discipline. I may use the temporary about Chinese legionary, Taishan, and the Feng Shui master, Vietnamese folk religion, and so on. They are all employed to help people to resolve this all kind of risk in your modern life. So my first question for Huang-Yen will be, what are the impact of this kind of a popularity of Shigandang to contemporary Vietnamese folk belief? For example, I learned from you, it's actually a revival. So if it's a revival, does it help the Feng Shui master, their business become better? Because you try to focus on the object itself and how did it work. So it revitalized the Vietnamese folk belief or not. And the second question will be, most of Shigandang has been studied in your paper is for the private use. And you do mention about one public installation of Shigandang in front of building. And I wonder, when you're talking about Shigandang, do you have more case studies, more focus on the public installation or implementation of Shigandang, which to protect the whole village building, residential community? But if they are, perhaps there's a chance we get to see how designated personnel to worship the Shigandang or not. It's become a public property, the shrine, and so on. And in your conclusion in the paper, you try to focus on the reason. There's a couple reasons, and mainly focus on the economic reason, because Shigandang become more affordable, and the people in Vietnamese economic well-doing, they encounter the different risk in their life, and therefore they need to find a solution. And mostly you focus on the master, Feng Shui master, become a main actor to utilize, you use this term, utilize religious market theory, rational choice theory, and the functionalism in the operation of a Shigandang. Would you spend time and explain to us what do you mean by that? What do you mean by the Feng Shui master? Utilize the religious market theory, rational choice theory, and the functionalism in the operation of Shigandang. And some others, small question will be related to perhaps not Feng Shui master, is from the user. How does this kind of a marketable item such as Shigandang or some could be crystal change the Vietnamese folk belief? And how about the narrative from the user side? And what kind of Shigandang, for example, become more popular? Not only and only in Vietnam. For example, I noticed most of sales still in print in the Chinese character, not in Vietnamese. So not really localized. Those are very interesting. So can we ask the what kind of meaning of increasing consumption of a religious item like a Shigandang in today's Vietnamese? Thank you, Joseph.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a lot of questions here. Let's try to keep it short in the answers, because there is we have Jasmine, Surinda, Anna, David, Tansen, Jondia. Nice to have you here, and Shik-Chi. So I give you time, like 2-3 minutes to each to give answers back to the discussant, and then we start getting into the questions that have been listed for later. It is now 7:24-25, so we have until 8:10-15. Let's try to stay sharp, because there is another panel coming out there. Okay, so please, answers. Floor is yours again.
So can I be the first one? Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, Professor Huang, for your fascinating questions. And then you have asked me probably 2 to 3 questions. First is about the regulation in Singapore. Well, I would say in Singapore, the landscape are all planned under the government, because in 1960, when the People Action Party government came in power, they already announced a Land Acquisition Act, which is an act that which means under the Land Acquisition Act, all the land in Singapore are state-driven, under the state control. That's why the religious activities and also temple, what you have mentioned about temples, and not only temples, but also cemetery. Cemetery also need to give way to urban planning, and then also give way to like the housing. So in Singapore, most of the rituals, the religious ritual, we seldom find funeral rituals conducted in the temples, because it's a lot of small temples are forbidden to conduct this kind of ritual. So people choose to conduct the ritual, and also the government also encourage the people to conduct their death rituals. For the bereaved family to conduct their death rituals in the HDB area, the public housing, the public space there. So I would say these are kind of like government driven. And for your second question is about the practice of rite and the length of the rituals. Yes, of course, what you mentioned is correct about the family choices, because a lot of young people in Singapore, they don't have that kind of strong connection to their ancestors. And second reason is hiring a Namadari master is very, very, very expensive, especially for them to conduct the different kind of rite. It costs like few thousand Sing dollars for you to do the like breaking the hell holiday, right? In Singapore. So I think you have pointed out a very good point. Is my limitation for my research is the perspective of the bereaved family. But why I didn't put the bereaved family, in my research is, their perspective in the research is, it's very hard to conduct interview with them. They won't talk to you much. And second reason is the consent form, because when I was in Singapore, I would say everybody is very eager, or they really careful about whether my speech will be like put in the paper or published it. So without their consent, I cannot record their narrative. This is also why I cannot put the narrative from the perspective of the bereaved family in my paper. Yeah, so, but what you have said is correct. I would say it's more like the family choice. So I think this is my quick response to the questions. Thank you.
Okay, so please, next one for the answers. You can decide.
Sorry, Josh, can I answer the question? Hello,
Go for it, please. Yes, don't
thank
you can just follow directly, no problem.
All right. So let me share my screen first. So the first question is about the source. So the source I use in this article is historical document, include the temple gazettes, and also the old news template at that time, include the Bing Chen Xin Bao. Yeah, and also I mainly correct the first-hand historical document from the temple, like the stone inscription here, and also all kind of other first-hand material, the statue, the template. Yeah, and also about the second question, I think you try. If I'm not mistaken, you try to ask me, how to prove that the Yongquan Monastery and the Kelo Monastery have the same pattern of the architecture. So, first of all, in the Temple Gazette, Master Miao Lian already mentioned that he tried to find a location where similar to the Yongchen Monastery, which is a mountain, first of all. And second of all is in certain hall in Kelo Monastery and also the Yongchen Monastery. You can see here, this is the Da Si Dian at Yongchen Monastery, and this is a Da Si Dian at Kelo Monastery, Jile Si. So both Da Si Dian and this temple, they have a stone, a dragon head made by stone, and this dragon head used to spray the water. I'm not sure it's the spring or any water from where. So, but the legend has it that if people who drink this water, they can cure all kind of disease. So this is the legend, but I try to explain is the Master Miaolin, he tried to set up the same pattern of temple in Malaya as possible as, yeah. So the third question is about the identity of migrant. Thank you for bringing out this question. I mentioned it in my article in this paper. I did not really answer it. The way I see is in the context of colonial Malaya under the rule of British government. First of all, the Chinese migrant, they have to face other religion to compete with their own religion, include the Islam and also the Christian promoted by the Christian missionary sent by the British. So therefore, they have to conduct and apply their own Chinese religion, which include the Chinese folk religion and also the Chinese Buddhism, the real Chinese Buddhism from the China monk. Yeah, so by conducting this religion, they have the chance to remain their own identity. This is the way I see. I hope I answered the question. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so my turn. Thank Professor Weishan's questions. And so the first question is about the concept of Buddhist modernism and global Buddhism. So I haven't defined well in the draft paper. I'm sorry for that. And also I skipped this information in the paper and presentation. So Buddhism, the Vipassana meditation movement, or if I call a new meditation movement in contemporary China, is influenced by the Buddhist modernism. It means that these kinds of Vipassana meditation developed in Myanmar or Thailand is a modern developed practices instead of a very traditional practices. So there are scholars discussing about how Lady Sayadaw in the 19th century in Myanmar developed a new kind of Vipassana meditation under the British colonial era for keeping the Buddhist practices in a modern way. And so put simply, I reply this question in this way. And the second question is about the gender issue. Yes, I would say in my field work in the meditation retreats about the on the Vipassana tradition, there are more female practitioners. More interestingly, also there are female meditation teachers in the Theravada tradition. So I didn't talk about that in my presentation. So in the traditional Mahayana CHAN meditation practice, we can hardly see any female nuns, or we call bhikshunis as meditation teachers. However, in Theravada tradition, we can see in Thailand or in Myanmar there are female Buddhist nuns as teachers, as meditation teachers. So I would argue that these transnational Buddhist meditation practices in the Southeast Asian tradition have impact or have changed the majority, I mean the Mahayana Buddhist tradition in contemporary China. So the third question is about the I use the term Chan fever following Qigong fever from Professor David Palmer. I did mention the psychoanalysis because in one of my field work, I found that the Chinese Mahayana monk, he include psychoanalysis and also psychotherapies in the meditation retreat, and also in the past 2 decades. In my PhD thesis, I did mention a little bit also about the there is a fever about psychoanalysis, and some Mahayana Chinese monks, especially in Fujian or in Shanghai, in Beijing area, some Chinese monastics, they include these kinds of mind, body, spirit practices in their monastery for healing sessions for their lay followers. So this is a very interesting other topic. So the final question from Professor Weishan is about the terms. There are different terms, Vipassana meditation and mindfulness meditation. So I would say Vipassana meditation, we would, we refer that as religious practices, Buddhist practices. And for mindfulness practices in mainland China nowadays, some people call Zhengnian, or some people call Jingguan. So mindfulness is seen as a secular practices. However, in my paper, I did mention in the case that Wu You, the monk Wu You, includes some secular mindfulness practices in the meditation, in the Buddhist meditation retreat for healing depression for some lay followers. So I'm sorry that I didn't clarify well in the paper. So the final question is about is there any organization? So I would say overall, I could not say I have done all the study for all the organizations, but I have done I've done studies and some interviews of some quite popular teachers and or popular organizations. There are organizations, for example, I did mention the Goenka tradition. These are well organized meditation traditions, and they have their own centers. They have over 300 Vipassana meditation centers in Goenka's tradition in over the world, and also it's the first Vipassana meditation center in contemporary China. But under the policy, it's difficult to expand that without attaching a Chinese Buddhist monasteries. So that is the I would say the expansion of the organizations would be a bit difficult, or there are some obstacles in some way. So maybe I stop here. Thank you.
Okay, can I answer my question now? Yeah. First of all, thank you so much, Professor Huang and other professor for your question. I will try to answer some of the questions here. For the first question, this is the impact of Shigandang for the contemporary Vietnamese people. I think it is quite clear that the Shigandang products that is can make a very have very useful for the Vietnamese people, especially the people who live in the cities in the north of Vietnam, especially for the white collar or the good whites or the business people, because the Shigandang product, it can show and it can directly show the problem or the need or the demands of them, especially in their modern and daily life of them. And for the second and for the second and the third question of you, I think that is also one of my pinpoints of my research and my paper here. So I think that I will dig into its method in the future. And for the question of Professor Palmer about the market for Shigandang in Vietnam, what is the competing product and specialists? Actually, I think, to my opinion, I think that actually there's no feng shui item or feng shui products that can compete to Shigandang in the Vietnamese products in Vietnamese markets now. Why I say so? Because just like I introduced to you, that the Shigandang product in Vietnam, they have so many kinds of the function, you know, from very simple one to very complicated one, and other feng shui item maybe it's only can show some sophisticated function, but for the Shigandang product, it has so many range of the functions that are for the Vietnamese pupil and the Vietnamese followers that they can choose from, and especially they have many kinds of the product. It can make by meter, in the paper, in by stone, or even more expensive. Some people for the Shigandang product. So actually, I don't think that there's other kinds of Shigandang or other feng shui items that can have so numerous and so plentiful function and plentiful size, and that can compete to the Shigandang in the Vietnamese market at the same time. Of course, we have a lot of other feng shui items, but I think the range of the function is cannot compare to the Shigandang product. And actually, you know that in Vietnam, the false belief and is actually very common and also very popular in Vietnam. And actually, there's a revival of the false belief in Vietnam now. So I think that maybe in the future, there's a lot of competitor to Shigandang products in Vietnam. And to another question about if there are another roles for the Chinese feng shui master to play in interpreting the Shigandang. Actually, up to now, when I do my research or my fieldwork, actually I don't see any concern from the Chinese feng shui master with the interpreting the Shigandang in Vietnam. But actually, there is some Chinese feng shui master who cooperated with the counterparts, with the Vietnamese counterparts, so that they can buy and can sell and buy more the Shigandang product in Vietnam. I think it is also very interesting. So actually, I want to do more research on this thing, but because you know that is a little bit so sensitive to ask them regions, so maybe it will take time for me to do more research and do more research on this problem. And another question, there are maps of the Shigandang distributed from Vietnam to Quanzhou. Yeah, actually, we have a very few material or document because this process. But why do we know this? Because when we do the fieldwork in the central of Vietnam or in the south of Vietnam, we can find a lot of Shigandang, and it's almost distributed in the Chinatown or the Huarenzhie in the central of Vietnam and in the south of Vietnam. And especially is that there are so many Shigandang store. That's what I distribute near the Quanzhou or the Quanzhou or Xiangzhou 那个西之后会馆。And when we are asking the people in the Huiguan, and they introduce this to us, so it's the reason why we know that the Quanzhou people or the Fujian people, when they going to Vietnam, when they move to Vietnam, and they bring the Shigandang beliefs to Vietnam as well. So it's the reason why. And another question, you know why Vietnamese people have this kind of worship to Taishan? I'm really sorry for not clarify it more clearly in my presentation last me, but actually I also mentioned in my paper, actually for Vietnamese people, especially for modern Vietnamese people, maybe they don't know where Taishan is, Mao Tai is, and they don't know, maybe they don't know Taishan is in very far from China. But in Vietnamese language, we have a very popular and very maybe very famous sentences like this. The kindness of a father is as greatest as Mao Tai, and the love of the mother is as clear as a flowing spring. And these sentences, we can say that every Vietnamese people, they can understand it. So maybe they don't know where's Taishan, where's Mao Tai, but they know that Taishan represents something like very something like the majesty, the hard work, the grandeur of the majesty. So it's the reason why the Vietnamese people, when they see Taishan or the Mao Tai, they believe in them, and they believe that it can protect them. They make them feel some reliable stability, the protection or something like that. And it's also the reason why all the Shigandang products that produced in Vietnam, they also have the Taishan Shigandang, not Shigandang, as we can see in Okinawa or in other countries. But in Vietnam, especially the Taishan Shigandang produced in Vietnam, always the Taishan Shigandang, not Shigandang. So it's the reason why. Yeah. So it's my answer. Thank you so much, and I hope that I can answer some of your questions. Thank you so much for that time.
Okay, we have several other questions waiting for you. What we can do is we can present all the questions together. We have almost 30 minutes. It's now 7:46. We have until 8:15 sharp. So maybe the questions that are pending can be presented all together, so you have more time to answer as a package. So the order is Jasmine, Surinda, Anna, David, Tansen, Jonjia, Sichi, and Masan. So you can go one after another with your questions. I guess some of them might be has been answered before. The question remains there. Please go for it. Okay, you just keep the order, so I don't need to interrupt you.
Thank you, everyone, for these great presentations. They're really fascinating. Kuan, you already answered my question in part, so I would just add a secondary question in if you have seen any water or springs associated directly with Nguyen shrines in those sites. And the secondary question, yes, was about a building order. You mentioned that the monks were first invited to practice in a popular temple, and then they built the Guanyin Hall. Was this the first hall of the clock temple, or was there a Buddhist Trinity first? Thank you kindly for your answer.
So now, please,
question.
The question you can continue. Question
My answer is only. I think it's only Yongquan Monastery. Is named as related. Sorry, I have my internet connection is unstable here. Maybe it's better for me to close the video so that maybe the connection is more stable. Can you hear me now?
George,
Yes.
aren't you collecting the questions first?
Oh.
I was asking to go all the questions once after the other. So maybe we wait for the answers and then your connection can be stabilized. Please, can you follow Surinda and then Anna? So we make all the questions first, as quickly, as short as possible, so we have time for the answers. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Surinder Shukla from Punjab University, Chandigarh, India, and I had the occasion to be in China and have a look at the religious kind of formations in India and China. And the similarity I find is that the yogic, the Vipassana meditation at all levels is a very great similarity between these two countries. It needs to be worked on. And I would like, the speakers to comment on that, especially Ngar from China, because she has worked on contemporary China, and I would like her to comment on this. Second, my own reaction was that when I see people from various Buddhist collections in Varanasi, they are all distinct by their dress that they form. Do you find a similar kind of a distinction in your understanding of Buddhism, Hinyan or Mahayana or Theravada? Thank you very much.
Anna, are you there to make the question?
Yes, excuse me. So my question goes to Dr. Lau. As you're probably very well aware, both in mainland China as well as in Hong Kong and Taiwan, in urban areas, we are witnessing the ongoing body, mind, spirit fever, or the Shenxinling fever. There are lots of predominantly middle class, younger urbanites who engage in different types of spiritual practices, what in the Euro-American context has been referred to as New Age. And part of these practices actually incorporate elements from Theravada Buddhism. They incorporate Vipassana meditation. So based on your presentation, I got an impression that a lot of these mainland Chinese practitioners, they've been previously involved in some Mahayana practices, Buddhist practices, and then they turned to Theravada. But are there any people amongst those that you have met that became interested in Theravada Buddhist practices, in these types of meditation, because of their involvement with Shenxinling fever, because of their involvement with New Age practices? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next, David, please.
Okay, so actually, my question was to Huang-Yen was already answered, but I wanted to follow up actually. Particularly, so I actually wasn't convinced by you said that there's no competition for this Shigandang, but surely in Vietnamese religious culture, Shigandang is a kind of an amulet or talisman. It's a protective object. And it's not like this is the first time that a protective object to protect you from misfortune, protect you from bad luck, to give you good fortune. I mean, I don't know much about Vietnamese religious culture, but I'm absolutely positive that such things already exist in Vietnamese culture, and Shigandang is not the first thing that has ever appeared to do this. So it seems to me that there really is why are they doing Shigandang and not whatever other things exist already in Vietnamese culture? Or why is it that if you say they don't exist, what does that mean? That means in these new urban middle class prosperous communities, they have no such thing. They've completely disconnected from other forms of Vietnamese religion. So it's an empty space that these feng shui. I'd like to think a little bit more about this, the context that this is happening in. Secondly, I was a little curious, because the emphasis of Taishan, right? And this is a bit following up on Xuan Ziqi's question. You mentioned in your article that it's somehow the notion that there's something very powerful there in Taishan. And actually, this is not emphasized so much in other places like Okinawa or other places. Now, we have, I was discussing from a colleague, Tam Ngo, who has worked a lot on Vietnamese religion and also on how China is perceived in Vietnam. And she presented a paper where there was this controversy in Vietnam about, it was some stone that it was said that in a temple where it was said that the Chinese had using feng shui had hexed Vietnam. And it seems that there was this notion that China has very powerful feng shui, so much that it could even, the feng shui operations of Chinese feng shui masters 1,000 years ago could affect the condition of Vietnam today. Does this mean that there is such this sense that Chinese feng shui is so powerful, and that is so that Taishan, if you take that, I'm just curious about the connection between the power of Taishan and the perception of China in Vietnam, which I know it's very complicated in Vietnam, right? Extremely complicated, and so I'm a little puzzled and curious about that. That's my question. And then I had a question for Elsie Lau about the right. Simply, you said that there's no pure Theravada kind of spread of Theravada Buddhism, but I was wondering, since you can go to Sichuan Bana and find some Theravada masters there if you're Han Chinese, just like so many Han go to Tibet, and Tibetan masters are going to Han regions. So is there such a thing going on where Theravada masters would be finding a market or a following among Han Chinese people the way Tibetans are doing?
Okay, thank you. Tansen, please.
Yeah, I don't know if Ming Kung is still there, but I had a question about use of categories and terms, especially when there's no transmission of doctrines taking place in the two papers, Dr. Lau and Kung. So what is Chinese Buddhism and what is Theravada Buddhism? Chinese Buddhism from Fujian is perhaps different from Buddhism from Guangdong. So it seems that when we use the term Chinese Buddhism, the local agency, including the agency of Penang and Malaysia, gets neglected. And it seems that it's an imperial transmission of a Chinese thing where the local has no role to play. Same with the Theravada Buddhism. Vipassana of the 18th century is different from the Vipassana of the 1950s. The Vipassana movement in 1950s is criticized by the Sri Lankans as well. So wouldn't it be good to call it a Vipassana connection rather than a Theravada connection? Because I don't think any kind of a doctrinal discussion on Abhidharma or any kind of textual basis on Pali Canon is taking place among the practitioners of Vipassana in China. So is it really a Theravada Buddhism, or is it a Vipassana movement of the 18th century rather than the 1950s?
Thank you, Tansen. Then Jonjia, please, your turn.
Okay, and my question is already answered by Huang Hua. But I want to follow up about the Vietnamese, the Taishan Shigandang. The thing that interests me is that reminds me of the Taoism that David Palmer also studies, and also Janet Hoskins. I remember presenters call it a kind of a redemptive society that is very transnational in pre-World War II era. So Weishan just now mentioned your study is focused on an object, but my question is something about the connection of ideas. If the Chinese feng shui masters play a role in interpreting the Taishan Shigandang in Vietnamese context, that is another sort of a connection, in addition to the connection, just simple as an object. So what I mean is, it seems that the Taishan Shigandang in your paper looks quite different from what I know of the Taishan Shigandang used in North China. But of course, there are some similarities, but for pregnancy, for fertility, for this kind of thing, I never heard of it. So this is something that new that happening in Vietnamese context. So in what sense there is a connection between China and Vietnam, especially in this context? This is very different from the pre-Second World War era, when China as a republic is placed as a model to the rest of of Asia. But now it seems it's no longer a model. It's something that everything that from China becomes negative. So I'm surprised it's still accepted and popular in Vietnam. So I really wonder what is the reason. Is there because the interpretation are different? So this is my curiosity.
Thank you.
Okay, over you, Jose.
Thank you, John. We are going to stop the questions for a moment because we have only 15 minutes. We go for the answers first, and if there is more time, we have the last 2 questions to go on. We are running, and we need to cut sharp at 8:15. So please try to answer as quickly as short as you can, and then let's see how much time we have for these answers. Thank you to everybody.
Okay, so I think that I will answer some questions from Dr. Davis first. Thank you so much for the question. And I think it's maybe because my English is not so good, but I want to speak it again that to my opinion, when I said that there's no competition for Shigandang, I mean because Shigandang, they have so many functions. So in the perspective of so many functions in a feng shui item, there's no other feng shui item can compete with Shigandang. But of course, as you just said, for the Vietnamese people and from the very long time ago, there's so many other the feng shui items in the Vietnam. For example, we can have a lot of feng shui items to gain the talent or gain the fortune or the luck or the past of 2 million people. We also have a lot of feng shui items like this, but they have a very little fewer function, or they have only one function. But Shigandang product, they have a lot of function in one Shigandang. So in that I mean that Shigandang has no competition. But of course, when you in a sophisticated function like for example, the protect people for the bad luck. Besides Shigandang, we also have so many kinds of other feng shui feng shui items as well. And I have to say that the Vietnamese people, they believe in the feng shui very much. Not only the open people or the people in the rural or the people in the city or people everywhere in Vietnam. So I think that I hope that I can answer your question a little bit. And for your second question, yeah, I really think that it's really very complicated to say how the China is perceived in Vietnam. And it's also, I think that when I say that it also can answer the person from another profession that said that because for the Vietnamese people, maybe they have many kinds of thinking or perceptive about different ideas or different perspectives about China. But one thing that they believe that because the feng shui or the feng shui culture is original from China, so they also think that the Chinese feng shui is very powerful. It's super powerful, not powerful, something like that. And one thing that we can say that we can say that, for example, a lot of materials, a lot of writing records of the feng shui words are now written in the classic China, specific classic Chinese, and we translated into the Vietnamese now. So it's also explain why the Vietnamese people, when you say that, oh, this kind of feng shui items come from China, so it makes Vietnamese people believe more in this item. So I know that the China perspective in Vietnam is very complicated, but in the feng shui item, we have some, I think, ideas about this one. And actually, in my paper, I also have some explanation why the Vietnamese people, they choose Shigandang, but not other feng shui item. Maybe some item from Vietnam or from China, but the Shigandang, they really have so many conditions of that they have that makes the Vietnamese people choose Shigandang. And the reason not only because of the Chinese powerful feng shui control, but also because of you know that the feng shui master in Vietnam, they use the narrative of the feng shui culture and feng shui history of Vietnam as well. Yeah. And so this is my my answer. I hope that this can answer some of your questions.
Okay, can I answer the questions? So I have quite many questions. I will try my best to keep it short. So to Professor Surinder's question, I think you did mention the India and China. There are representation groups. I was not aware about the representation groups in India. If that is the Goenka's tradition, is a big representation organization in India, and it's also the biggest, one of the biggest groups in China, if we refer the same tradition. And so about you mentioned about in Varanasi, different Buddhist group meet from other traditions. There is possible as a pilgrimage to India, but I'm not very familiar about what is happening in India. But there should be some Buddhist networks in Southeast Asia and also India. Thank you for your question. Next question for Anna. So you did it's about any people who didn't practice Mahayana Chinese Buddhism, but they start practicing the Theravada one as a new age spiritual practices. Yes, I say yes. I had interviewed these cases. I can send you my papers if you can email me about your question again. And for Professor David Palmer's question about if there are any pure Theravada Buddhism, and you did mention that Han Chinese ordaining in Myanmar or Thailand, after they return to China, they would like to build a monastery. For example, in Sichuan Bana, I did mention the case about the Pak Old tradition, but I would say they create a kind of a modernized form of Theravada Buddhism, and it's a big argument and discussion about what is Theravada Buddhism and also whether there is a pure Theravada Buddhism. But anyway, to many contemporary Chinese Buddhists, they would think that they imagine that the Theravada Buddhism, the Southeast Asian Buddhism, is a kind of the oldest Buddhism in the Buddha's time. So this is also related to what anthropologists would talk about emergenary, and they would like to build emergent communities in China. And to Professor Tan Zhen's question about also about the definition of Theravada Buddhism. So literally is the doctrine of the elders. And I'm sorry that I didn't put the spread of the doctrines and also the philosophy. I skipped that part in my presentation and also my paper, but I did write articles about that. So in my study, put it simply, the books of Theravada of Pali Buddhism, the books of Pali Buddhism, and also some meditation teachers like Ajahn Chah or the Burmese, the famous Burmese meditation teachers. The books were translated into Chinese by Taiwanese, and then they were copied to China. The copies were sent to China before the spread of all these movement or meditation groups. So the spread of doctrines and philosophies are really important, because in Mahayana Chinese Buddhism, they don't have the same the Pali literature like the Dhammapada, Fa Ju Jing, or some different ways of about Buddhism. So I would say the Buddhist doctrines makes difference in this movement. So the last question for Ma Zhang about whether there are people practicing both Mahayana, Chan meditation and Theravada Buddhist meditation. Yes, from my previous published papers, I did mention that. And also in my presentation, I did mention that the monk Wu You, and also I skipped the Bhikshuni, the nun, who practice Theravada in Thailand, Theravada Buddhism in Thailand, but she keep her Mahayana Chinese robe, and she from the recent updates, she's still practicing Chan, the traditional Chan instead of Theravada. So I can send you some papers if you're interested in that. And I would say the one last answer about it's not a short-term practice. The Theravada meditation movement or transnational meditation movement changed the lives of some people, and some would like to distinguish their identities from the Mahayana Buddhism, and they don't want to go back to the Mahayana Buddhist groups. So, but it depends. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, so I think we have time for maybe one more, maybe two questions. So, Shitsi, if you want to throw your question to the floor quickly.
Oh, thank you, and thank you for the presenter. And actually, my question is have been solved by Huang-Yen's present, but I do want to follow one question about this. I don't know if I missed some materials or missed some information from your article or the presentation, but did you find a lot of distribution beyond the like the Shigandang, beyond the Chinatown, or in the like beyond the immigration society? Because I think someone had mentioned that, but I can't remember if you answer that, but there's a lot of Chinese information, like the Chinese territory on the website that's selling Shigandang. But is there any like Mandarin people who are interested in Shigandang as well? Oh, thank you.
Will I answer now, or I will wait for another question?
Please go for it.
Okay. Actually, about the distribution of Shigandang in Vietnam, actually, I don't think it is quite popular in Vietnam, but actually, it's different from the north to the central and the south of Vietnam. For example, in the north of Vietnam, actually, almost the Shigandang that we can find now is in the Vietnamese people resident. For the Vietnamese people, it also means that the Shigandang is not only very popular from the Chinese people that immigrated to Vietnam, but also transferred to the the Vietnamese local people. But in the central of Vietnam, actually now in the central of Vietnam, the most popular Shigandang we can find is in the Hoi-An. You know, the Hoi-An is in the central Vietnamese. It's a town. It's a common town in the central of Vietnam. There are a lot of Chinatown and Japanese town over there. So now the most Shigandang in the central that we found in near Hoi-An and around Hoi-An, about 40 the Shigandang near Hoi-An. But we also find some other Shigandang in other the Vietnamese local people in Hue, also in the central of Vietnam, and in Quảng Nam as well. But the number of the Shigandang in the Vietnamese local people in the central of Vietnam is not as many as in the Chinatown near the Hoi-An. And in the south of Vietnam, actually, I think it is almost balanced. If we divide the distribution of Shigandang over the time before 19th century, we almost can find the Shigandang in the Chinatown as well. For example, we can see a lot of Shigandang in the many Huaren Huiguan in Ho Chi Minh City. For example, in the Quanzhou, in the Fuzhou, in the Chaozhou, the city hall, we all can find the Shigandang in there. But also after the when we go into the 20th century or the 21st century, actually we can find a lot of about 10 Shigandang in the Vietnamese local. The local Vietnamese people, especially now when we do the field work, I can find, I think, many Shigandang. That was built by the Vietnamese local people. For example, in front of their house, in front of the KTV, also in front of the building, or something like that. If you have any case, you can visit Ho Chi Minh City of Vietnam. I can bring you there, so you can take a look at the Shigandang in the shop, and you can see that it's quite different. You can see it in the Chinatown, and you also can see the local Vietnamese people.
Okay, thank you. But just a quick question followed. Did you like?
We are almost there. I'm sorry. We
Okay,
have
sorry.
to leave. It's a sharp cut because it's, the next panel is coming in 50 minutes. It has been a very, very interesting presentations, fascinating discussion. We have the contact on each other, so you can continue with these questions. You can email to each other and continue this discussion, exchange articles and papers and links and information. Thank you to everybody for being part of this and for this, as I say, very exciting discussion. And then see you after the break in the next panel. Thank you to everybody.